It's Thursday here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We've got Mark Kaboly with The Athletic on, and we have some questions about how the Steelers are handling quarterbacks, and are they treating Justin Fields unfairly throughout that process. We'll talk about that and a lot more here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. As of we're joined by the man himself, Mark Kaboly. He's from The Athletic. He's been covering the Steelers for a long time. Mark, how you doing?
Pretty good, Chris. How's the summer treating you?
Oh, it's treating me fine. I still haven't taken a real vacation, but, you know, we're going to try to take at least one or two before training camp starts up in a couple weeks.
Yeah, you better hurry up now.
Yeah, just a couple weekends. I'm trying to get out a little bit. But let's get into some questions here we have from some fans, because, Mark, you and I have talked about the quarterback situation. Last time we had you on, we talked about how, like, the narratives that were being spun incorrectly about Justin Fields' time in OTAs and minicamp. But there's still some people out there who think that Justin Fields should be giving a better chance at being QB1 than what it projects to look like here. I want to throw it to Dennis from Oklahoma City, who asks this question about the quarterback situation. Take it away, Dennis.
Hey, Chris. Dennis here out of Oklahoma City. Love the show, by the way. My question is real quick and simple. Are we giving Justin Fields a fair shot to ever be a starting quarterback? Or is everybody just throwing him in the trash just based on his work from Chicago? Personally, I've been a fan of his since he came out of Ohio State. I thought that he had a chance to be really good, and he was ruined in Chicago. This is the AFC North. He's what we need, a big, strong quarterback with a strong arm who can run, kind of like a less polished Lamar Jackson. I just don't think people are giving him a fair chance. They've already decided he's never going to be any good, and he's just there to be a backup until we can get somebody better. What do you think? Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. And as always, like Dennis, you can call into the show at 412-223-6644. Mark, there's always the question about, you know, quarterback battles and so on and so forth. You and I have kind of talked about this a lot, how this is Russell Wilson is QB1, Justin Fields is QB2. They'll be allowed to show what they got in training camp, but it would take some drastic things to make it happen there. Do you feel like Justin Fields is being treated unfairly here?
I don't think so, because we really haven't seen much rather than a couple OTAs and a couple mini camp practices. I mean, the Steelers are saying everything right?
Yeah.
You know, they're not really ruling him out. It's just us watching and seeing and knowing the organization that figures that, and knowing that Mike Tomlin, how he goes with that one guy and doesn't really believe in quarterback competitions is why. I mean, Russell Wilson was their number one choice. Remember, if they wanted Justin Fields, they could have got him back before they got Russell. The only reason why Justin Fields is on this team right now is because Kenny Pickett did not want to be on this team right now. So when you take that into account, you know that Russell Wilson is going to get the benefit of the doubt. I don't think anybody's throwing him in the trash quite yet. Let's just see here, man. I've been saying this for a while, Chris. If he doesn't take a snap this year, I would be okay with him. Talking about Justin Fields.
Yeah.
If you can determine whether or not he could be your franchise quarterback, or at least a guy that you can rely on for 2 or 3 years down the road, because all you have is basically, you know, bad tape from Chicago. I mean, you have some good tape, but it hasn't been recently. He has some mechanical issues. You're able to clean that up through this time, and if you need him in October, November, December, he's there. And then it's a worst case scenario. You can determine whether or not he's going to be your number one next year because you don't have a quarterback right now. That's the way I look at it. I mean, he's a young guy, talented guy. I'm not throwing him away at all, but in this point in time right now, what we know, what we saw, what we know the organization, Russell Wilson's their number one and should be their number one.
Mm-hmm. And he should be. This is the 9-time Pro Bowler, a Super Bowl champion. He knows how to lead offenses. Meanwhile, Justin Fields, I mean, I think anyone would easily argue that Justin Fields' athleticism is higher than Russell Wilson's right now. He could probably throw the ball further, harder. He can run faster. He could be more dangerous. But as far as putting it all together, that's where Russell Wilson has it over him. His experience is undeniable there, and I think that's where Justin Fields doesn't have it. But at the same time, the reason they got Justin Fields was that they felt like he could develop into something. They didn't just get him just to get him because they needed a body. I think that they really believe that he has potential, but he has to show that he has potential, Mark. And if he doesn't show that, then they're not going to have a reason to stick with him. And I think Russell Wilson gives them the buffer to have time in training camp throughout the season. And let's also be real about this, Mark. Injuries happen. And I'm not wishing ill upon anybody, but Russell Wilson could take a rough hit and have to miss a game or two or worse. And in that instance, that's when you'll get to see Justin Fields if that does happen. And then we get to see, what's his progress like? How has he gotten better in the Steelers system? Is he a guy that can be a franchise quarterback? And so I don't think it's necessarily unfair, particularly because I think Russell Wilson has been a better quarterback than Justin Fields. And I think it'd be unfair if Justin Fields just automatically got it over Russell Wilson. I'm like, where's the track record for that?
What's wrong with him just watching and learning from Russell Wilson for a year?
Exactly.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, I mean, then you put the ball into Justin Fields' hands come March, and if he wants to come back or not, if you don't extend him at some point before the season, I mean, you're taking a chance there. Then you move on, and it's just a waste of pick and waste of time here. But, hey, it takes more to be a quarterback than just being athletic and throwing the ball. If that was the case, then Tom Brady would stink, right?
And Michael Vick would be the GOAT.
Marcus Russell would be a Pro Bowler, right? Right? So it takes a lot more than that. It takes – I mean, Peyton Manning wasn't a physical specimen, right?
No, he was not.
A lot of quarterbacks now are physical specimens. Of course, we see that now. But it's more between the years what to do, how to lead, too. And that's where Russell Wilson, I think, is just head and shoulders above anybody on the quarterbacks on the roster right now.
I want to get back to Russell Wilson and how he fits in with the Steelers too in a second here. But do you feel like this philosophy, before we dip into specifically Russell Wilson, do you feel like the philosophy of how the Steelers handled the Kenny Pickett situation, even when it was Kenny Pickett trying to get a job over Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph, do you feel like there is at least a sense of consistency there, or do you think that there's some problems there in how they've handled those situations?
I mean, it's been problems, right?
Yeah.
There hasn't really been anything where, Pickett really never was given a chance his first year. I mean, he did Mason. I mean, it's been well documented about Mason Rudolph being a third-round pick, right? And he was considered a first-round grade. And what did they do? Don't have a quarterback coach from him, make him a third stringer, make him do virtual reality to get his reps. I mean, you put him behind the 8-ball right to start here. And even back to even Landry Jones and guys like that, never put him in a situation, but they never needed to. When you got a guy in here 18 years like Roethlisberger, I mean, that's one thing that Mike Tomlin's never crossed that bridge before, how to deal with quarterback competition. So he was learning as well, and I think they did fail. I think they failed Kenny Pickett not only once but twice, not giving him more of an opportunity early on, then throwing him 16 quarters into his career and say you're our guy. Then you keep Matt Canada around for a potential second year. I mean, there's a lot of mistakes made right there. Those are mistakes that you don't have to worry about right now because you got a 35, soon to be 36-year-old quarterback who could pretty much do what he pretty much has been there, done that when it contains to everybody. So maybe a guy like Tom Arth can rely on helping Justin Fields out. So I mean I think it's well documented that they haven't been very good at developing or even treating quarterback competitions fairly or without any rhyme or reason too.
I hear you on that. I want to get into Russell Wilson in a sec here. We'll do that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, with Mark Kaboly of The Athletic. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, got to remind you, this show is brought to you by Game Time. Buy tickets to your favorite events without it being stressful at Game Time, an app you can download right to your phone or go to their website, gametime.co. Game Time is where you can find all the tickets you need for your favorite sporting events and so much more. This summer, that means baseball season. Get tickets to see your favorite ball club play, whether that's you're a Pirates fan here in Pittsburgh trying to see the rookie phenom Paul Skeens pitch on the mound, or you're in Los Angeles trying to watch the world sensation Shohei Ohtani play for the Dodgers. Guess what? Game Time can get you tickets for both wherever you go. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. You get killer deals on last-minute tickets, and they have a best price guarantee that can't be beat. Plus, you can save up to 60% off buying tickets at the last minute for sports, concerts, and so many more other events. And the best price guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section of row for less somewhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase, or go to the website gametime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter here with Mark Kaboly of The Athletic. Mark, let's get into Russell Wilson a little bit here, because I want to talk about, you talked about that, the leadership component. I think that's something that is debatable here, and we've actually also addressed this with a previous caller's question a little bit too. There's some notions that Russell Wilson isn't a leader, that he was disliked in Denver and Seattle, and that there's why would you bring that to Pittsburgh here? But when we talk to guys that covered the Broncos, like Cody Rourke and Sayer Bellinger, two guys that have been around the team, they were like, there were a lot of people upset in Denver when they didn't pay him to keep around, because he had developed a strong leadership presence. Do you feel like, just knowing this locker room, this team, the temperament of these players, and the way that you've seen Russell Wilson, do you think that is a fit and can actually lead to positive growth there on the offense?
I think so. I mean, I think that's something they missed greatly last year. I mean, with Trubisky and Pickett, I don't think there was a ton of leadership here. I'm not ripping on Kenny Pickett. I mean, it was his second year in the league here. He was more worried about himself. But when you saw late in the season, Chris, when Mason Rudolph came in, that team gravitated toward him, and they played their best ball because they were playing for him. I mean, I don't know what Russell Wilson's like. I mean, we know what we see in the locker room and what he puts on social media, but you talk to people and everybody seems to like him. I don't know if he's phony. I've been saying this all the time. I don't know if he's phony or not. I have no clue. But does it really matter if they believe him? And they believe him and he's able to produce and they win games. It's not going to matter if it comes from the heart or not. He's doing everything correctly. And I know Tomlin, back, what was it, when Roethlisberger left, they were looking for a vet quarterback, right? Because he didn't want to deal with the young guys, because he knows that's what it takes. He knows that what happened the past couple of years is what would happen. So to give it into the veterans' hands, say, this is your team. We know guys like Freiermuth love him. We know some of the receivers love him. George Pickens will love him if he throws him the ball, right? And the offensive line is the offensive line. We know who the leaders there are. I don't think you're going to get too much BS past Isaac Seumalo, right? Right. He can see through anybody's BS. But if you get those guys believing, that's all that matters right now. And I think he's very, very equipped to doing that. I mean, he doesn't have to blow up numbers. He doesn't have to throw 30 touchdowns. He just has to be efficient. They have to run the ball and they play defense. And I think that's another reason why Russell Wilson's a no-brainer starter, is because he's probably not going to turn the ball over as much as, say, Justin Fields' potential to do that. And they win games here. They're going to run the ball and they're going to play defense, and they're not going to make mistakes. They're going to punt the ball. They're going to kick the ball with Chris Boswell, and they're going to win, 20 to 18 games, 20 to 17 games. So I like his leadership. Like I said, if he's kissing babies and going to Kennywood and whatever he's doing, I don't really care. If they believe, that's great.
I do believe that Russell Wilson has a bit of politician in him, because there's times we ask him questions and he has the answer already ready to go. He brings it out. He knows how to make it more personal and try to make it more entertaining. And I think that that's not a bad thing. That's a guy who knows what role he's playing. He knows how to turn on at the right moments rather than trying to always be honest or be this or that, and then you end up saying the wrong thing. He seems to be prepared to not say the wrong things on camera and to be the leader who steps up when his team needs a face like that. I think that's very important. I think that's something that the Steelers need. And I also think, and I've said this before too, I think part of this is the overall flipping of culture in the offense. Mark, you covered Ben Roethlisberger. Did you cover his rookie season?
Oh yeah, I was there actually the year before when they went 6-10. I'm there for their last losing season, so
that's crazy to think. So you've seen Ben Roethlisberger from start to finish, in how that worked out, and over time, like you look at the defense right now, leadership has been handed down succession. They're from all the way back to Casey Hampton, James Ferrier, and Troy Polamalu, and James Harrison, Ryan Shazier, Cam Hayward, now TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick. Like, there's been a succession of leadership there. There was a succession in leadership on the offense, but then it got cut off like right at 2020 when Ben Roethlisberger's, his body gave out and he couldn't be the same kind of quarterback that he was. Marquise Pouncey and David DeCastro retired, and Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell both left the team. So all of the superstars that were supposed to lead this Steelers offense and pass down the leadership to the next in succession to the next group of leaders, it didn't happen. There was a clear cutoff, and I think that's part of what they are hoping that Russell Wilson resets, is be a leader who people can follow, and it restarts a plan of succession of who are the elder statesmen, who are the guys that lead the offense, and then that can start being passed down to new guys as they're added onto the roster.
Yeah, the key with that is to have young players who are going to be around a long time too.
True.
So they got 3 of those guys on the offensive line. It looks like they're going to be here, 8-10 years. So that's a good start right there. I mean, who knows what Pickens is going to be. If they can sign Freiermuth, he's another guy you can really rely on to have a leadership. And it seems like he's taken he's not a big talker, as in Freiermuth, doesn't say a lot, but he's trying to lead more this year. You can see it.
Yep.
And that's what you need from those guys. I mean, back to your other point about other guys' game, a guy like Ramon Foster left too, and he was a huge leader too. They didn't have much leadership whatsoever, and there was such a gap too between Roethlisberger's last year of being 37-38, and the Steelers on the team being 24. I mean, they weren't going out. They weren't hanging out with him. They had nothing in common.
Right.
There. So I like his leadership. I mean, I think that is one of the reasons why he's going to start. And if he's going to succeed, that's going to be the case. I mean, I don't know. You hear the horror stories in Denver. You hear the horror stories in Seattle. But I don't know if that's coming from inside the locker room or outside the locker room. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's any other players that I heard talk poorly about him. It's other people that have said, hey, this Russell Wilson's a phony, because keep an eye out for him. So, like I said, he's a guy that I think fits their need right now for this team.
I agree with that assessment. I think that, they were very fortunate to get him at the price that they got him, and I think that he could end up being the guy that helps them get to whatever future they want to get to at this point. But I want to talk more about that and how big the fix can be on offense as far as production-wise. We'll get to that next year on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter here, Mark Kaboly. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter here with Mark Kaboly. Mark, I've been saying for a while that, and even before this year, I've been saying, hey, the Steelers don't need a top 10 offense. They don't need a top 12 offense. They need an offense that ranks somewhere in the middle, because you look at how things, have happened to them really over the past, several years. They've had offenses rank towards the straight up bottom. Like, that's just what it's been. They've been able to survive because of their defense while their offense has struggled. I mean, you look to last year, they finished 28th in scoring, 25th in yards. The year before that, 26th in scoring, 23 yards. The year before that, 21st in scoring, 23 yards. So if they could just get into the the ranking around 16th range, and this defense stays healthy and still plays at a very strong clip. Do you think that's enough to make this team a contender, or does this fix need to be even bigger for them to actually be a real threat as a team?
Well, they're going to have to stay healthy, right? And they're going to play defense better than – they're going to have to be more consistent on defense, right? I mean, they've shown flashes of greatness last year, but then there's been too many times where, you see the 10 plays, 80-yard drives at the most inopportune time. You can't do that when you're spending $160 million on a defense, right? Mm-hmm. Those guys have to go out and just be dominant from start to finish. And you think about the offense, and you're like, okay, did they really upgrade a ton? You lose Deontay Johnson, replace him with whatever. Mm-hmm. Their offensive line is young. They should be good, but who knows when. The way where they upgraded at is where you're going to get it at, I think, is with the coordinator. I mean, look at the last 7 years of coordinators. Mm-hmm. I love Randy Fichtner, but I don't know if he was quite ready for that job. And we know what Matt Canada was able to. Just Arthur Smith alone, and I know people in Atlanta and Tennessee are probably like shaking their heads and stuff, saying this guy's a bum. But some people's trash are other people's treasures. If he's here last year, maybe they do put up those 21, 22 points per game. All that's necessary. So I think that makes a huge difference. I mean, more consistency at quarterback, a plan of running the ball, not turning it over, and a pretty substantial coaching staff on offense. I think they have one of the better groups on offense right now with, you bring in Zach Azani and Tom Arth and Arthur Smith, and you move Mike Sullivan up the ranks. And Eddie Faulkner's a great coach. And Pat Myers you can't expect much more from him. Alfredo Roberts, tight end, is a pretty good coach. I mean, you can't expect more from those guys. So I think that's where it comes in too, is I think they're more prepared and have a better surrounding cast around the offense than they had in quite some time now, where they can scheme yards, scheme points, rather than just saying, Ben, go play catch with Antonio and let's score.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is there were plenty of times the Steelers used to score where it was just like, hey, AB, go get that, and Ben, go throw that. But now it's, they need to be able to move the ball consistently. They need to be able to attack on offense and have efficiency. And it goes back to Russell Wilson. And again, I think that, you talked about that efficiency and what he can bring to the table. I think that's why he's such a good fit. And again, going back to our original caller, Dennis, who was saying, like, is this being unfair to Justin Fields? No, it's not. Because it'd be unfair to Russell Wilson if we just chucked out his whole history and said, you know what, that doesn't matter. You're just going to go based off of how athletic these guys are. Forget about it. I think that's a big mistake for people to think that way. If it's about fairness there, I go back to Russell Wilson. I think that he can be a great fit for what this team needs right now. And in fact, you look at the way the last time he won the Super Bowl, the way that the team he played on was put together: strong running back, offensive line, defense that could beat the tar out of you. That's exactly what the Seahawks were when Russell Wilson was at his prime, and he was winning Super Bowls with them. Well, a Super Bowl with them. Went to another one, and notably made a big play. The other one that went the other way. But to the point there, I think this is a guy who, with the style that the Steelers are asking for right now, this can absolutely be something where they do see some progress. He does play even more efficiently than he did last year. And again, if they hover if they can get to the best in the NFL this coming season, this past year, that was 21.5 points. So if you can just average a little over 21.5, if you can average 22 points per game, you will be in the upper half of the NFL. And I think that's all this team needs, as long as they're healthy, stay right in.
I mean, look what else they did too. They brought in Cam Johnson as a punter. Might be a throwaway thing, but that's a field position game to turn around and give the offense the ball in a better situation as well. I mean, I think you said it perfect. I mean, Russell Wilson fits what they want to do this year. Now, fit doesn't mean success.
Right.
He does not have to go out there and prove he can not be the Russell Wilson of 2 years ago or 3 years ago. He's still going to have to go out there and get the job done. But what they're looking for right now, on paper, he's exactly what they need.
I feel you on that. I want to ask too, like we've talked about him and how his temperament's worked with other guys. How do you see him working with George Pickens? Because George Pickens, we see, can be a very interesting personality, and he can be he's his own, right. He's his own man. He does what he wants. But I feel like when you're a quarterback and you're a receiver, you need to have a pretty good bond, and I think it could be very important for Russell Wilson to develop that bond early on with George Pickens.
Yeah, which brings us back to the elephant in the room, right? How much can you get George Pickens involved if there other teams are trying to take him away because you don't have a legit two? If Pat Freiermuth's going to be your
right.
the two, right? That's why I keep harping on that number two. I mean, you have a lot of guys that can help.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jefferson could help. I mean, of course, Quez Watkins, Calvin Austin. I mean, you can go right down the line. Scotty Miller, who knows? They all can help out. But regardless of if they help out, why wouldn't every single team just take George Pickens out of the game? If you're Russell Wilson, do you force him the ball? Then George Pickens, doesn't. I mean, it doesn't benefit the offense, or he don't throw him the ball and he pouts. I mean, he seems like he's gotten more mature than last year when he.
I agree. I think he has.
I think that's definite. But hey, when you get older, you tend to mature a little bit more. But as long as Russell seems like a guy can massage his ego, but that's all wide receivers too, just not him. All those receivers have ego, but you have to get him involved. And I don't know. I don't know what you can do, Chris, at this point in time to improve the number 2 wide receiver spot. It's to the point where Roman Wilson better be Randy Moss's rookie year type of situation. If not, I think there might be issues there. I don't think Ayuk's going to happen, right?
No. I've been saying that for a while. That's very low probability. The Niners would have to drop on their asking price. He would have to drop on how much he wants from a team. Just all sorts of things don't add up for him.
Well, Thomas, he's a guy that hasn't done anything in 4 years.
Yeah, that too.
And who's going to cut a guy in September that's going to be any better than what you have, right?
So. Agreed entirely. I think we're on the same page here, Mark. There's potential there, but we got to see what happens in training camp, especially at the quarterback position. Thank you, Mark, for joining us. Thanks, Dennis, for the question. But, Mark, thanks for joining us here. Let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Oh, over at theathletic.com. Is that .com, right? Don't follow me on Twitter or X because 9 out of 10 people just call me names. So, and I tweet nonsense.
Leave Mark alone, people.
I tweet nonsense. I'll tweet yeet.
You tweet yeets?
I tweet yeet, and everybody thinks I'm breaking news somehow, and I'm just watching wrestling and Jey Uso, I'm like, no, I'm watching wrestling. Jey Uso's wrestling. What are you talking about?
I have to admit, I didn't know why you ever tweeted yeet. Whenever you tweeted that,
and it's his saying, yeet. He has a shirt that says yeet. People think I'm breaking news. I put my phone down one time, and I'm like, oh, what happened? What happened? I'm like, I don't know. I'm watching wrestling. What do you mean?
That is so funny. Mark, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Do read all of his work at The Athletic. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. Back here tomorrow, finishing out the week, talking about your Steelers here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.